Namaste everyone. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Swami Mukundananda and Dr. Debroy. I am sure I speak everyone's mind when I say it will be a pleasure to be a part of this riveting conversation between the pillars of spiritual and holistic enlightenment. This conversation commemorates the book launch of Golden Rules for Living Your Best Life by Swami Mukundananda. I'll begin by introducing Swamiji, the person who does not need an introduction, but I will try my best. Swamiji is a world renowned teacher of spirituality, yoga, and meditation. He has pioneered a holistic system of yoga known as Jagat Guru Kripaluji Yoga. As an international authority on mind management and a best selling author, Swamiji has been a guiding light for millions worldwide on the path of everlasting happiness and fulfillment. Everybody knows Dr. Bibek Debroy, but here is a few bits on him. Dr. Debroy is the acclaimed author of the Bhagavad Gita for millennials and Devi for millennials, and co editor of the book Navratri When Devi Comes Home. He is currently serving as the chairman of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India. He is also the recipient of Padma Shri Award, the fourth highest civilian honor in India. Thank you so much for joining us here and being a part of this conversation. Golden Rules for Living Your Best Life is a wholesome, holistic guide that integrates spirituality, teachings from the Vedic scriptures, and solutions to the how to problems posed by people in everyday life. Now, I would like to request Dr. Devaroy to share his thoughts on the book.
Swamiji, Swami Mukundananda has taught a lot. He's been read a lot. I have read several of his books, and this is his latest book. This latest book, as you've just been told, it's about golden rules for living your best life. It's a mix of several things which I will ask Swamiji about. Of course, it's about Adhyatma. Of course, it has its base in the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, it's about finding out who you are, which is part one of the book, which is titled Spiritual and Emotional Wellness. But then he goes on to talk about four other issues also about health, harmony and relationships, professional fulfillment, and even financial abundance. So it's a combination of adhyatma, yoga, the search for spirituality, but it is also like a management book in a sense. And of course, he is an MBA or was an MBA. It's also a self help kind of book. So it's all kinds of books put together into one. And earlier, he has written books on other aspects which are about spirituality, well being, etc. So, my first question to Swamiji would be why this particular book?
Namaste, Dr. Bibek Debroy. I feel honored and privileged that somebody of your eminence is interviewing me. Personally, it should have been the other way around because you are the author and you're the one who has accomplished so much, but it is your generosity that you have chosen to question me on this. Yes, this book was intended to be a manual for life itself. So, whenever we have a complex gadget, we look for a user's guide that would tell us on the procedures on how to handle the gadget and something to do in the case of troubleshooting. When it comes to life, we enter this world without any knowledge. The difficult experiences come first, and the learning comes as a painful curve later on. It is like being thrown into the deep end of a swimming pool and being told, okay, now you learn how to swim. So, the idea behind this book was to gather the wisdom that would take care of a majority of the aspects of human life and put it as a ready manual. Now, of course, there is a manual by the Supreme Divine Personality himself, which is Sri Krishna, and he has presented us with the Bhagavad Gita. So sometimes the Bhagavad Gita is a little inaccessible to common people because the knowledge is so lofty and sublime. And also, it is a purely spiritual guide. We also need wisdom to handle the material aspects of our life. So, the Atharva Veda, the Mundaka Upanishad, it states so brilliantly, Dve vidye veditavye parachaiva paracha, that look, there are three branches of knowledge: material science and spiritual science. And you need to harmonize both of these to reach the supreme goal. So, this book was conceptualized as a one stop resource to give people the wisdom they need to lead a fulfilling, effective, and a happy life.
Uh, Swamiji has effectively given you in 1 minute what is there in the introduction. Because the question that I asked him, why this book, is something that he also answers in the introduction. So let me ask you a different question. And he's described it as a manual, which is how he describes it in the book also. So let me ask you a question which is there throughout the book. And it's a question that plagues everyone, particularly perhaps the young, at whom some of the examples in the book, the style of writing is clearly directed. What makes a person happy? What is happiness? All kinds of people have tried to define it. What would you interpret as being happy?
Yes, Dr. Debroy, the pursuit of happiness is fundamental to human existence. And everything we are doing is in search of happiness. And this rule has got no exception, which means there is nobody who does anything except in the pursuit of happiness. So, somewhere or the other, we are determining this is where happiness lies. Now, thinkers and philosophers throughout history have tried to present us with wisdom on what is the good kind of happiness, what is the bad kind of happiness, what kind of happiness will fulfill us, and what will only inflame the thirst even further. So, for example, the Kathopanishad says, look, there is prayer and there is prayer. One happiness which seems so attractive and alluring right now, but later on you realize that it has sabotaged your mind or jeopardized your life. That is prayer. And then there's the other happiness, which is prayer, which right now appears to be painful. You need to undergo austerities and handle discomfort. But then later on, when the fruits come, they are sweet and full of nectar. So, in my analysis, this search for happiness is going on. And in general, people are running after the objects of the senses. Are they running after material things in the hope that something outside of me will give me happiness within? And then we may have heard of Saint Kabir's verse, Pani bich mean piyasi mohi suni suni avatahasi. Or the Ramayana which says, Anand Sindhu Madhya Tava Vasa Binu Jane Katamarasi Piyasa. that if a fish is in the water and it says, I am thirsty, it becomes a very humorous situation. Likewise, the ocean of bliss is within us, and we do not know the way how to reach it. But that happiness which is within us doesn't need anything from the outside. It comes from two things. The first is when we find a higher purpose in our life, and when we align our efforts with something we truly believe is meaningful beyond our selfish seeking. That gives us the inspiration to actually undergo austerities and give the sense of fulfillment that satiates. So, when we do what we believe is really good, and when we strive to do good, we get this realization someday or the other that the biggest impediment in doing good is not outside, it is my own self, my laziness, my lack of self discipline, my lack of self control, my lack of mastery over my own thoughts. And then to do better, I need to become an improved person myself. And we strive to be good. Now, this urge to be good again gives a great sense of fulfillment. It is not even how good we are, but the effort, the delta improvement for which we are trying, which gives happiness. So, the conclusion which I'd like to present is that to feel good, you need to be good and do good. That's the secret to happiness.
Okay. Uh, so, if I may, that's essentially the substance of part one of the book in a way, that the happiness is within us. The external part is irrelevant. In answering in the book, why you wrote the book, you referred to a shloka from the Bhagavad Gita or half of a shloka from the Bhagavad Gita, um, that there is nothing like jnana, which is as purifying. There is nothing as purifying in this world as jnana. But the next half of that shloka essentially says that if I follow this path and if I become a yoga sansiddha, then I will realize the Atmani which is within myself. And you have also quoted another shloka from the Bhagavad Gita, which is Matra Sparshastu Kaunteya Shitoshna Sukhada Agama Paina Nitya Tante Tikhash Bharata. Now, the question to you, therefore, is if I've achieved this happiness that you have spoken about in part one, if I've realized that this happiness is inside me, if I've realized that everything else is external, the pursuit of the material is external, the relationships with others is external, then what exactly is the need from the reader's point of view of 2, 3, 4, and 5? Is it that I need 2, 3, 4, and 5 because I recognize that many people will not be able to abide by the principles set out in part 1?
Expect a scholar to ask such an in depth question. Well, I would like to divide the answer into two parts. First is when we are on this journey, and second, when we have reached the goal. So, although we understand that happiness is within, to realize it is not a one day affair that yesterday I was a sinner and today I have jumped to the level of enlightenment and become a saint. It will have to be a process, a journey that we will undertake. And in this journey, these will be the vehicles. For example, our scriptures tell us that your body is your vehicle for practicing dharma. Sharira madhyam alu dharma sadhanam. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, look, Arjun, नात्यश्नतस्तु योगोऽस्ति न चैकान्तमनश्नतः न चाति स्वप्नशीलस्य जागृतो नैव चार्जुन. If you completely stop eating, you cannot achieve success in yoga. If you eat too much, again you cannot achieve success in yoga. Yuktahara viharasya. Agreed, you are not the body. Agreed, you are the soul, which is divine and non-material. But the soul at present is enmeshed in the body. It possesses the material mind and the material intellect. So that material nature will need to be maintained. And if something goes wrong, we may say I am the soul, but we have not realized it. So when the body is experiencing pain, at that stage it will become difficult to even practice spirituality. We may say Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, but the mind will remember Hare stomach, Hare head, and Hare foot. So our spiritual efforts will be derailed. And the second is that even on the journey, we are talking about doing good. So while material consciousness sees profession as something for enhancing one's material goods, for growing in self glory, the spiritual perspective doesn't reject profession, but sees profession as a means for doing effective work, for contributing to humankind in a way that will make a difference to the life of one person or the whole world. So the profession is the same, but the intention behind it is the one that has changed. And finally, somebody who has completed the journey and can say, yes, I have actually found happiness within myself. Even such a person has two options. The Buddha said that once you become a Buddha, now you have two things you can choose from. The first is that you do nothing and enjoy your own bliss. Or the second is that you try and help others achieve that state. So we see these God realized saints who descended into the world. They were, in a way, not like us in their consciousness. They were already liberated from the prison house of Maya. And yet, they were inside striving to help others achieve the same state. And for that, they were drinking like us, eating like us, wearing clothes like us. The material nature in itself is not bad. Very often, spiritual people develop this perspective that to be spiritual means to reject the material. However, to be spiritual means to purify your intention. And when the intention is aligned with the Supreme, then we look on this world as the energy of the Supreme. And we say, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyan jagat. The whole world is the veritable form of God. And now a knife is not bad. A knife in the wrong hands would take life, but a knife in the hands of a doctor could save life. Similarly, one in divine consciousness doesn't run away from money as something bad, but sees money as the energy, as a form of Lakshmi. And it is not to be used for ourselves. That is the Ravan consciousness. I'll kidnap Sita for myself. But to see it as belonging to Narayan and use it in a way that pleases God. So when we start using everything in the service of God, then we don't deny the world. We simply change the way we look at the world. And hence, an enlightened sage would not say that the health tips are all useless, but would say, okay, I'll use them all so I can take care of my body because this is the means by which I'm serving God. And thereby, the sage is even more careful about these aspects of material wisdom that can serve the higher purpose.
That's a beautiful answer. You used the word austerities earlier. Uh, I think, and I am sure you will agree, that the word tapas is impossible to translate adequately as austerities because it has the sense of scorching, purification, which austerities does not quite capture. One of the most interesting sections in the book I found is the section where you talk about going through discomfort and handling discomfort. Will you please expand on that a bit?
Definitely, Dr. Debroy, everything that is worthwhile in life lies upstream. That is the interesting riddle of this world. And Mark Twain put it so nicely when he said, if you wish to be healthy, you have to eat the things you would rather not, to drink what you would usually discard, and to do what you would left to yourself not do. So, good health doesn't come by itself, but destruction of health is very easy. And the same principle lies everywhere in life. If we wish to master a skill, the only way to do so is repeated practice, where you apply your mind and intellect, and your lower self may complain that this is not so enjoyable. I would rather sit and watch Netflix, which would give me all kinds of entertainment, but that will not lead to growth. So, like you have said, this word pasya, it doesn't have an exact English equivalent. Our Indian languages are eminently equipped for explaining spirituality because they've been developed so wonderfully by the saints over the many millennia. And amongst these, in Sanskrit, of course, the word tapas is there, and the number of saints who happened to write in various dialects of Hindi, they extended the vocabulary of Hindi even further. So it becomes such a pleasure to discourse in these languages. But when it comes to translating them in English, we are kind of handicapped. The word dharma as well. It is such a complete word in itself. But when you wish to give an English synonym for it, then we start struggling, which I'm sure you must have done because you are one of the most prolific and accomplished translators of the Indian epics into the English language. So this word tapasya is a voluntary discomfort that we are taking onto ourselves because it is purifying us, because it is leading to inner growth, and it is helping us achieve the skill sets or the mastery that we seek. So in the book, I have put this as my very first chapter that look, if you don't have the skill set that I will tolerate the good kind of pain, the pain that is uncomfortable right now, but later on it leads to a lifetime of fulfillment, then there is nothing to gain from this book. So may as well shut the book and do something which is far more pleasurable, like surfing on social media. But if the idea is to find, to live a meaningful life that aligns with a higher purpose and to grow to your best self, then make a decision that I will befriend discomfort because that is the way forward.
The first part of the book puts in place, like a manual, many of the ingredients for sadhana. And I'm deliberately using the word sadhana. But it also mentions a guru. How do I find the right guru? There are gurus and gurus floating around, and without any disrespect meant to you, many of those gurus are not quite adequate enough to be gurus. So, how do I find the right guru? How do I know that person is the right guru? Or is it the case that the guru finds me?
Yes, there in every field, this bell shaped distribution is there. In the case of doctors, also, there are doctors and doctors floating around. But then somebody doesn't say, I'm unwell, but because there are so many varieties of doctors, so I will not go to any. Because they realize that I am unwell and I do need a doctor. Likewise, the thirst needs to come that I have a jnana or ignorance, and I need the guru who will show me the way to jnana. So when that thirst is ignited, then the search begins. And our scriptures have always told us, Guru binu hoi ki jnana, that look, the scriptures are the textbooks, but then you need the teacher as well. And Bhagavan Ram himself, he went to a guru. So the Ramcharitmanas says, Guru griha gaye, padhan raghurai, that Bhagavan went to a guru. I say, well, Bhagavan doesn't have any agyan. Why should he go to guru and what will he study? So did he study ka, kha, ga, gha? Well, he did. So just to ensure that we don't get confusion, Tulsidas ji completes the chopai Alpakala Vidya Savai. In a little while, he got all the knowledge. And then he goes on in the next chopai, Jaki Sahaj, Kwas Shruti Chari, So Hari Pad, Yah Kautuk Bhari. Look, that Ram, who by his Kwas, Nishkasitamasya Veda, he manifested the four Vedas, he is studying from a guru. This is Kautuk. This is Leela. But Bhagavan did it to give us an example that, oh souls, you will need a guru. So Ramakrishna Paramans gave this example. He said, look, if your thali got stolen, it doesn't mean that for the rest of your life you eat from the ground. You go and search for another thali. Likewise, we may have had one bad experience with the saint, but when the hunger is there, our search will continue. If somebody had achieved contact with an enlightened sage, Bhagavad Prapt Mahapurush, in the past life, but could not complete the journey. In this life, God will lead the soul to that sage. Then it will be the case the Guru has found the soul. The Guru knows who's eligible, who's going to benefit, whose sanskars are ripened and pulls to himself. But if somebody's sadhana of endless lifetimes had not reached that level of maturity as yet in this life, they will need to search. And that searching is not easy. It's like supposing we put a grade one student in a postgraduate class and say, evaluate these teachers. The student will say, I don't have the eligibility to decide which of these teachers is better. Likewise, as we begin the path, it is not easy to decide that who could be the guru. But our scriptures have given us two qualifications. Tad vijnanartham sa guru meva vigachet samitpani shrotriyam brahmanishtam. The Atharva Ved says, to know the Supreme, approach a guru And how should the guru be? Shrotriyam should have the theoretical knowledge of the scriptures, and Brahmanishtam should have realized that knowledge and achieved the state of enlightenment or be situated in that transcendence. So, those are the two things that we should try to look for. But the final word on this is that God is sitting within us and He knows our deepest desire. So, when our deepest desire becomes, I want that ultimate goal, He guides us to a place that enables us to move ahead. And people, they compromise and they cheat themselves. I want material things. Then God guides them to a wrong place and they develop the faith there. And then later on, when they get cheated, they say, oh my God, this saint was bogus. And the point was that they themselves had not yet purified their seeking. So our seeking must be sincere and God must reciprocate. And then that connection between the disciple and the guru gets created.
Let me draw you out since you mentioned past lives. Let me draw you out on something that's not directly addressed in this book, and that's the role of karma and the extent to which karma determines my decisions today. If it is God within who's driving everything, if it is my karma that is driving everything, yatha niyuktosmi tatha karomi, if that is what it is, then what is the role of free will? The fact that I'm not listening to Swami Mukundananda, the fact that I'm not reading this wonderful book, all of that has been predetermined. So, what is the role of I as a decision maker in all of this?
Well, Dr. Debroy, this is a question that is in the minds of many Indians because we grew up hearing thousands of times, Bina Bhagwan ki इच्छा के एक पत्ता भी नहीं हिलता. So we developed this kind of mentality that it is all the supreme will which is determining anything. But the point is, like you have said, that if everything is the supreme will, then what is in our hands? And if nothing is in our hands, then why was the Bhagavad Gita spoken at all? The Why should Swamiji write the Golden Rules book? Swamiji is an insignificant person. Why should Sri Krishna speak the Bhagavad Gita? He is repeatedly telling Arjun, if you do this, this will be the consequence. If you do that, that will be the consequence. He could have finished the whole Gita discourse in 2 sentences. Arjun, whatever is happening is by my will. You don't need to understand anything. But even at the end of the Gita, he says that iti te jnanamakhyatam guhyad guhyataram maya vimrishyai tadasheshena yathe chasi tatha kuru. Arjun, I have given you the knowledge. Now you ponder over it and then do as you wish. People with the fatalistic viewpoint who say that everything is predetermined by our karmas, I would like to ask them, where did these karmas come from? Purva janma kritam karma tadaiva miti kathyate. What actions we performed by our free will in our past lives became our prarabdha in this life. It means that we had free will in the past life. And if we did not have any free will in the past life, then there is no prarabdha that we created. But if we did create a prarabdha, meaning that we had the freedom to choose, now the law is the same in every life. then we have the freedom to choose in this life as well. So, our Vedic perspective is of three kinds of karmas. One is the sanchit karma of endless lifetimes, your stockpile. And the second is the prarabdha karma. God takes a portion of it when He sends us into the world. My child, in this life, you need to bear with it. And the third is the karma we are doing out of our free volition at every moment. That is called kriyama. Now, prarabdha is fixed, but kriyama is not fixed. It's like when we are dealt a hand of cards, we have to play with the cards that were dealt to us. But how we play is all a matter of our own expertise. And that gives the basis of life, the free will, the freedom to choose.
We have dealt with the first four parts of the book in one way or the other. So, since we are running out of time, Swamiji, let me quickly ask you about part five, which is very unlike a section in a book authored by a Swamiji, which is on financial abundance. So, will you quickly tell us about that?
Definitely, Dr. Debroy, this, of course, is your area of expertise as the chief economic advisor. But I have given my perspective from spirituality. Like I said, that money in itself is neither good or bad. It is how we use it which makes a difference. So we will need to do money to earn money to take care of ourselves. But in itself, even if you wish to do good work, you will need money for it. So, what is the principle behind earning money? Now, this is where the confusion lies. People are trying to extract as much as they can. Now, any industry or any company, their policy is you have to milk the environment, the customers, etc., and squeeze out as much as you can. But they seem to miss out on the simple principle that you provide value to your customers. And when you win them over and they become your raving fans, the profits you get will be in acclaim for the value that you provided. And this turns around the whole concept of business is not trying to get as much as you can, but as a win-win situation where others have needs and others have problems, and we are trying to solve those problems. And when we are doing it in a manner better than others, they are becoming our loyal customers and they're providing us with the needs that we have, which in this case could be finances. So, if we wish to increase our profits, we don't need gimmicks. Of course, we need business sense and business strategy, but the primary focus should be how to add value. This is the idea of servant, the service attitude, which society is so much in need of. I was speaking to an investor, very famous. He gives investment advice, and he said, Swamiji, the problem in this today's environment is that now India has got the startup culture. And earlier on, people would invest their money in banks, and now they find that there's a bigger return they get when they invest in startups. So the problem is they are always forcing that when are you going to sell out and I can get my shares back. So it leads to very unhealthy environment when investors have such an attitude. So I explained that look, a healthy organization must have not one bottom line, but three bottom lines. It should be the it should have the objects of choice means that people see value in what that organization is producing, and that is why they are coming to it. Secondly, it should be the employer of choice, that people who are working for the organization are finding their fulfillment in life by doing that. And it's not about the management squeezing them out. And as a result of being the provider of choice and the employer of choice, it becomes the investor of choice, investment of choice, when the profit comes as an acclaim for its performances. So, in this, I have book, I have given some common sense wisdom on how to handle your finances. So, of course, there is the lure of gambling, and it takes on a sophisticated form in the share market where people say, okay, you invest short term. And so many of my devotees, they land up saying, Swamiji, I lost it all. And say, okay, what is a sound advice on how to invest? So, all this kind of wisdom that I have gathered with some research, some experience with my community of devotees, I've tried to share in the last section of this book on financial abundance.
Viewers, listeners, you will have realized how wonderful it is to listen to Swami Mukundananda. We could have gone on for hours. He has a website. There are plenty of videos. Please visit the website. Please watch the videos. And of course, do read this excellent, excellent book. I hope we've been able to trigger interest in you to read this book. After reading this book, also do listen to what Swami Mukundananda has to say, because his style of exposition is something that cannot always be replicated completely in the written word. Thank you, Swamiji. It has been an honor and a pleasure. Namaste. I'm sure we will meet again.
Namaste, Dr. Debroy. And I also uh, had the opportunity to enhance my knowledge about the good work that you're doing. And I would like to say that I also made a resolve that I will read all the wonderful books that you have translated because I'm sure I'm going to benefit tremendously from it. Thank you very much. Namaste.